Thank you very much for that perspective, which is slightly different from the civil society, and it has to be. That's a conscious of society. Now, since we are running short of time, but because of the opening session, so we took a bit of time from this session. And therefore, I will allow, if there are pressing questions, I know that the presenters of this morning will be around and they will be debating with us in the afternoon. But if there's somebody who wants to have specific questions to our high table and some of the presenters, welcome to do so. I will just allow a few questions before we break for coffee. And Ambassador, your session will start on time. and I know how it will be managed. Any questions? I don't see any. Well, yes. Sir, you have the floor, sir.
A question for our final presenter. One of the things I'm working on, for example, I'm also working at agricultural supply chain products using blockchain. And one of the things we're looking at with that is that often we're trusting the producers to be putting the data in. And as you stated, if there's not integrity from them, if they're putting false data in, it could create a worse problem, or at least that false sense of security that people have. But don't you agree that if there's at least more data provided or more data shared, it might improve the system? I mean, at least right now, it's a black box. We don't know what's happening inside of a supply chain, or the public doesn't know. At least if they're sharing it, even if it's a permissioned system where they're the ones reporting and there's not necessarily a public oversight of it, or people can double check and see, if they are lying to the public, companies could be caught more likely. Do you think that at least having more data shared is beneficial in that sense?
I certainly do agree. It would be beneficial. We need more transparency in agribusiness in general. If you try, there's actually less information, for example, about market share in agribusiness today than there was 20 years ago or 10 years ago than we have today. Try to find out, for example, today what the market share is of the farm machinery industry around the world, and it's virtually impossible to get that data unless you pay a large fortune for it. So I think you need more transparency of all kinds. It's not I would distrust the producer, especially the smallholder producer. I'm concerned about transparency throughout the entire food chain. To the extent that is helpful in this case, that's great. But my major concern about transparency would be around market transparency than it would be around whether or not the mangoes come from that farm in Mexico.
Yeah, okay. I think those are very good comments. What I also would like to add is that blockchain has a disciplining force by making everything transparent and so quickly available through a distributed system to everybody. It's much more difficult to actually forge data or change it because you're going to be caught out very quickly. So it has a self-cleaning effect when properly implemented, of course. Thank you.
Hello, Professor Linston from the MNRC. I'm a neuroscientist. Considering blockchains, don't you think it would be advisable to set up a new global governance infrastructure inviting coordinated collective citizen institution collaboration on an equal footing with equal opportunities? We are faced with a global network of interconnected global challenges that can only be appropriately managed by first setting up a new global governance infrastructure. So perhaps it might be useful to integrate this notion of blockchains with a new global governance infrastructure. Otherwise, I seem to be witnessing, well, people are speaking of a holistic approach. I seem to be witnessing a kind of holistic fragmentation, which isn't exactly the same thing at all.
Thank you. One more question? Want to answer that?
Thank you for the interesting presentations. My name is Lonneke van Genuchten from Fair Foods, who were slightly mentioned also by Chris Edison. Thank you for that. I've got a question for Alice Namuli. Thank you also for your presentation and your dive into Uganda. I wonder, what is the position of this at this moment also of the smallholder farmers? Are they actively participating in blockchain projects or pilots in your country? And also, what is their feedback, or what is maybe results of some research of their participation? Thank you.
Well, we have different farmers. We have the farmers in the urban centers, then we have the farmers, like I told you, in the rural areas. Now, the farmers in the urban centers, those ones, it's easy actually for them to understand if you approached them. But I think the major challenge is with the ones outside the urban centers. But the magic to it is that when you teach them, they're very enthusiastic. To them, the most important thing is you just tell them what to do. As long as they have the technology, access to it, it has worked magic. And guess what? This has also created virtual cooperatives. You know, in my country, we used to have cooperatives, but somehow, I don't know what happened. Our 32-year government, what happened? Somehow they disappeared. But this has become very, very powerful to create these virtual cooperatives, meaning it makes it very easy for anyone to know, like from the northern region, there are so many farmers because they are already on a platform, and this is how much actually they are selling their produce, and this is what is available at a particular time, making it also much easier for the logistical companies. But in terms of them as the farmers, it's more of a solution, and they're very, very enthusiastic. That is at least the ones, the clients that I've represented who work with these communities in rural areas. That's the feedback I've got. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, also there's a kind of restorative power that the technology creates, right? Like making those communities of cooperatives vivid again. Is it?
Yeah, it definitely does. It's shifted the power. They feel very empowered, extremely empowered. One, they don't have to go to the mainstream financial services. Two, the middleman is out of the question. And then the whole idea of, oh my goodness, it has reached the end product, and I know actually the actual price. The actual price used to be that I sell something in a rural area, and then someone buys it at least less than $1. By the time it gets to me in Kampala, it's most probably like $5. So you don't understand what exactly, what exactly happened. But here, these are very, they get to know, even me as the consumer, I'm happy that I'm actually contributing this amount of money to the farmer. There's a particular brand of coffee that actually I like. They don't use you're able to know the name of the farmer, the kind of coffee you're taking. Is it Arabica? Is it Robusta? When it was grown, when it was harvested, and how much actually they were paid. For me, that's extremely empowering. And knowing that it feels like there's a connection you have. But I think slowly by slowly, definitely it's going to boost our economy and empower, the citizens.
Thank you. Next question is the Ambassador of Kenya. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to find out what has been done to interest our young people in agriculture. Because you find that is a major problem in our country. I want to believe it's not only in Kenya, but the entire African continent. So can we be given that experience? Number two, we've been told that this blockchain technology can be used to monitor international agreements compliance. What has been the agreement? It's one thing to have an agreement, Mr. Chairman, whether international or otherwise, and another to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I talk about young people in Uganda, how it's been helped?
In Kenya or Africa before you talk about Uganda.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I'm just giving an example how the blockchain is helping Ugandans. First of all, like I told you in my presentation, there are all these hubs that are coming up. First, the young people themselves are innovating. They're churning out all these innovations day and night. But also in the agriculture sector, the fact that there's this transparency, even young people are getting involved in agriculture. Before, it was not the case. All of them were running away from the sector and coming to urban centers and doing really jobs that really don't make so much sense. But they are going back because if the industry is productive, they feel empowered being part of the whole process. And that is how they are slowly by slowly getting more involved in the agriculture itself, but also in the innovations.
I think the youth is in Africa are really, well, not only Africa, but because we also had a case from Jamaica and elsewhere, they are involved in innovations and they are experimenting, and some of them under very trying situations, in some of the slums, and they really make some interesting experiments and innovations in some of those things. But we are going to hear more about this as the session goes on. I think we are now going to break for tea. We break only for 10 minutes. And at some stage, if you still haven't had, because there will be another opportunity for exchange during lunchtime. So we just go break for tea, and we are allowed to bring the tea into the room also. Thank you very much.